This podcast is brought to you by Market Convention. Ever want to visit Mammoth with your Aflac friends and family? Do you ever want to ski the slopes? Do you ever want to go into the old town? Even go hiking? Well, in Mammoth, Aflac is paying for it all if you qualify. Do it for our 2027 Market Convention. Welcome back to LA Legends, where Aflac pros sharpen skills, swap stories, and build the LA South market one legend at a time. I am Michael Fisher.
And I'm Michelle Lee. Today's episode is about how someone gets their start, how they bring others along, and what living the dream looks like once the dust settles. The real stories, not the highlight reels, but the decisions that change the trajectory of a career.
And our guest is somebody very special. So when I asked every single market director in the West Territory who's one person that they look up to and seek advice from, that is a fellow market director, they all said Mr. Tim Worthy. And so I've spent a lot of time over the last year trying to learn from Tim, and he's gracious enough to give us some time today talking about buy-in, building people, and creating this culture that's not only changed like his family's life, but a ton of people inside of his entire community in Oklahoma. So, Tim, thank you, buddy. We appreciate you joining us today.
Well, I sure appreciate y'all having me on. I've seen some of the names of true Aflac legends that you've had on. I don't know if I stack up to that, but I'm certainly happy to be here. And I think what you guys are doing is literally one of the coolest things across Aflac Nation today. I am pushing my people to come on and listen to what y'all are doing because this is very, very well done. Listen, I was, matter of fact, just listening to Joe B. Your episode with Joe B this morning. You guys do a wonderful job.
Thanks, man. Yeah, everybody brings up the Joby, and he talks about being on his throne in the morning, where he does most of his deep thinking. That's maybe the most quoted thing that we've had so far. So good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Michelle, I'm gonna have you kick us off, okay?
Well, Tim, to get our team to get to know you a little bit better, let's take us back to the beginning. How did you get into this business?
So, I have an 8-year college degree. It's a bachelor's degree, but it took me 8 years to get it. I didn't want to get out of college. I was having an absolute blast. And then, on my senior year, my 8th year, I met my wife, and my world changed. It sped up fast when I knew exactly who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And so it was like, okay, it's time to get out of college. And as I was doing that, I was interviewing for positions, and another company had come in and interviewed me, and I was getting ready to take a position with them. And I went home for the weekend to see my parents, or Leanne and I did. And I was talking to my dad, and my dad, who has been a mentor and one of my best friends for my entire life. He has so much wisdom, and I think this is one of the times I thank God that I listened to him, because I didn't always, right, and I don't always, but my life would probably be a lot better if I did. But he said, "Hey, I see what you're doing, see where you're going." And we didn't have hardly any money. My daughter had been born. She weighed 2 pounds and 3 ounces, spent 6 weeks and 4 days in a trauma unit. Anyway, I'm getting ready to take this job. And at the time, I was making $8.50 an hour. We had a child that was special needs, at the time. And my dad goes, "Before you take that job, I just want you to do me one favor." And at the time, he worked at a paper factory. My whole life growing up, my dad worked at a paper factory, and he said, "I want you to look at this thing called Aflac." And I kind of said, "So, Pop, what is it?" And he kind of, explained what would have happened if I had had Aflac when we went through what we did with my oldest daughter, Harley, who's now at DSC with us.
And qualify for market convention on her own. That was awesome.
She did, yeah. And she feigned in like the first 2 weeks of this quarter.
Wow.
But anyway, so when he explained it, I'll never forget, my next question was, "So are you telling me it's all commission, Pop?" And he's like, "It is, but I want you to look at it." And I looked at him, I said, "Dad, we we love you guys. But the reason we come home every single weekend to see y'all, which is about an hour drive, to go see them, is yes, we love seeing you, but also we're hungry. We didn't, we don't have a whole lot of food at the house. We're barely scraping by. And every time they would pack up the leftovers and groceries, to send with us. And I'm like, I can't imagine doing something, that's just that. And he said, I get it, son. Just go in and interview. If you decide not to do it, it's fine. But it's one of the greatest things I've ever seen, and I think it could change your life. And I didn't tell you about it before because I wanted you to graduate from college, before you did it. But I want you to at least look at it. And so I did. I went and interviewed. Uh, I had to borrow a suit to interview in. The car that I drove to the interview, I actually parked a block down the street and around the corner, because that car, was $700. Was driving a
Nice.
$700 car. Paint it's not an option, on a $700 car. So most of the paint was gone on it, and I thought if these people see, what clothes I actually had and what I'm driving, they'll never hire me. So anyway, I go to the interview, I leave, and I go home. Leanne, my wife, is sitting on the floor with my daughter Harley, and she looks up at me and she said, "Well, what do you think?" And I just looked at her and I said, "Well," and we were down to the decision. I had the job offer from the other company, which came with a salary that was 5 times, the $8.50 that I was making. We were super excited. And I said, well, it's commission only, but the upside is a lot bigger. But we may have to stay in what we're doing for a little while longer. We may have to have a tough life for a little while longer. And I looked at her and I said, what do you think? And I mean, we're, very, very young and just barely married at the time. And she looked at me and she said, I'll stand beside you no matter what you choose. And I said, well, I feel like that, this is the route for our family, is the route I want to go. And, thank God I
Wow.
listened to my father.
Wow.
Okay, I want to ask you, was your dad a policyholder? Like, how did he know about Aflac?
So my uncle, if you go back, my grandfather was a superintendent for a very small school here in Oklahoma, a small school called Soper. That's where my mom had graduated. And we're talking about, a school where probably the average class is 15 people, 20 people, what have you. But my grandfather had allowed someone with Aflac to come in and he took out a cancer policy and he went through cancer. And Aflac was just amazing to him and my grandmother and kept them afloat. Well, my uncle had been a school teacher, and when he saw that, my uncle Jim Swink had been with Aflac for over 35 years. When he saw how well Aflac treated my grandfather, he actually contacted the company and said, "Hey, I would like to do this." So
Wow.
he started out, doing Aflac and really putting it in a lot of schools and what have you. And through time of doing that, like back in the 80s, he actually got my dad licensed with Aflac. My dad never actually left, the paper cut factory that he was working for. I
Hmm.
didn't really do anything with it, but he had gotten, appointed. And so he had a little bit of knowledge about Aflac and what it could do.
That's so cool. I mean, it's unbelievable, and like that's we always talk about this, like how it freaks me out of like the couple conversations that people had with me, and of course, one or two loved ones, like my dad actually believing in me and my mom believing in me, and being like, no, go after that, like that's like go chase it. Where if they didn't do that, if they were actually rational human beings, I don't know where I'd be, but I could tell you probably wouldn't be in a great spot. It freaks me out actually thinking about it, but wow. That I did not know. I want to do a small little pivot here, because we talk about you and I, we get to talk, and we get into some pretty deep philosophical things sometimes, but um, Number one, I love hearing when you talk about nominations. Let you share the story of like how you've actually like built up Oklahoma and your community and all that stuff. And then also I want to, sprinkle in a little bit of like the gang philosophy. So let's let's do a little bit of that too. Can we talk let's take a step back a little bit. So you're in your Aflac career, what was it like early on for you? Did you have any moments that you got completely punched in the face and almost ran in the other direction? And then when did things start going? Did they start turning for you?
So, starting out, I can't say that I was like super good. I mean, I wrote the AP to qualify for my All Star series, but
Hmm.
my no pay was, kind of high. So I didn't, qualify for all of the deals. And coming along, I had a tough time in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it was because I wasn't exactly sure of what I was doing. We didn't really have training, back then or anybody to go with you. I kind of fumbled my way through, and it changed for me really when I was promoted to a DSC very very early on, and the turning point came when I was responsible for other people.
Ah,
That absolutely just it excited me and scared me all at the same time because I was that guy in that position with a family. So my feelings were so connected to how these new people feel when they come in. And so I was like, I can't fail. I can't bring people here and have them struggle and feel exactly what I'm feeling every day. So the thing that I promised myself is that I would always, always stay connected to what a new associate feels like. And not just what it feels like in the business every day, but what it feels like when you go home. And, another big aha moment for me, and probably one of the biggest ones, the biggest turning point that I could say for that was the day that I officially decided to quit. We all think about quitting 100 times, but I officially decided to quit. And at this time, my wife and I were living in a little bitty town of 650 people. We lived in a house that was, I don't know, 600 or 700 square feet, built in the 1920s or 30s,
hmm,
not a very nice place. And I went home and I was just demoralized. I'd had a really, really tough day. And mind you, this is like 2 months before I got promoted. But I go home and I sat down on the couch. I'll never forget, Harley's kind of playing on the floor. My wife was in the kitchen cooking, and I sat down on the couch and I just kind of had my head in my hands, and she walked into the living room and she said, "What's the matter with you?" And, I was maybe a little bit overly emotional, in the moment, and just not very happy with myself,
yeah.
you could say. And I looked at her and I said, so when I decided to do this, I thought if other people can do this, I can do it too. I can figure it out. And I think, um, I was wrong. I'm not who I thought I was. And I think I've put our family in a tough situation, and we're still living, a tough life here, 6 months into this deal. And, I made a mistake and I'm going to make it right to you. I'm going to go and get a real job. That was my exact words there. I'm going to go and get a real job. And she just stood there for a minute, no real expression on her face. And she said, okay. So the guy that never quits on anything decided to start today. And she turned around and
Wow.
walked off. And I was like, I mean, that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I started thinking, what am I not doing? What am I not doing? And I thought about that all night long. I couldn't sleep. And the next morning, now mind you, this is 23 years ago, so I couldn't go in on my phone and download a book, or right. The next morning I got up and I drove to a bookstore in Sherman, Texas, called Books A Million. Did not have, we had 50 something dollars in our bank account, so I couldn't buy anything. But I drove over there and I went to the section on sales, and I started picking out books and reading them. And at the time, I would stand there, right at the aisle, and I would take the book out and act like I'm looking at books, but I'm reading because I couldn't, really afford to
Yeah.
buy. And then I would get something that would get me excited, and I would go to the car and I would go out and I would work for a while until I started to feel demoralized. And I would drive back over there and go to that book section, and I
Yeah.
would start reading some more. And like, I don't know, probably 2 weeks or 10 days into this guy comes walking down the aisle, which at the time, this is my biggest fear. Like, they're going to kick me out and not allow me back because I'm reading all their books and I'm not buying them. And this guy comes down the deal, and I'm immediately like sticking the book back on the shelf and acting like I'm looking at another one. And he walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, man, there's tables and chairs over there for a reason. You can, you can read anything you want. I really don't care.
It's okay.
That's cool.
Make yourself at home." And I was like, I thought he was fixing to kick me out. I was literally scared to death as if I was going to get kicked out of a business on a cold call. But
Yeah.
that literally is where my life started to change. I discovered Tom Hopkins on those shelves, and Tom Hopkins, is one of the greatest in my mind that's ever lived in terms of how to structure a sale, how
Mm.
to present, yourself, how to think about it. The cover of one of his books is "Act Like a Lamb, Sell Like a Lion." And that was the starting point that literally began to change my life.
Man, that's unbelievable. I wanted to just underline a couple or highlight a couple of things that I just personally related to. One of them is that just for like some of the high achievers that are really going after it for themselves, Michelle being one, myself, the people that I've led that have had some of the hard path in the early part of their career because of no pay and stuff like that, where you don't like get the bonus payout for what you've built. I mean, that's really tough, but when you battle through that, that's huge. So that was one of them that I was look the second one is Michelle and I talk about this because we talk about like, why us? Why, why what made us click? And it was for Michelle, which was a CIT, for me when it was at a CIT. Of that exact moment where you can relate to that what that person is going through, a new associate, and be like, "Hey, I'm not gonna allow them to suffer the way that I did." And it just as you were just describing that, I know why I like you a lot. It's because of, there's some people, and I'll say it even inside of Aflac, and I honestly, most of them are gone, but I'm like, "Oh, you're a sociopath." Like, really, like, I'm like, "You don't even care about people." Like, that's insane. But, the people that have built a sustained, thoughtful, loving market that also makes a lot of money, it's always keeping that in mind of just like, how close at so many moments where it's like, should like a rational human being would quit. And, a rational partner would be like, dude, you need to quit and go get a real job. And I think that it's just a really important thing that, our leaders always have not only just that empathy, but also just, make it so it's like, hey, the next generation's not going to fight through the same things that we fought through. And it's going to be better and better and better. And, it's always going to get closer and closer to some version of perfection.
Struggling to connect with business owners? The Site Seller gives you the facts, talking points, and solutions you need right at your fingertips. Build trust, show value, and close deals with confidence. Site Seller, where conversations turn into partnerships.
I just wanted to pick up because I know you started talking about nomination culture and what you have built in Oklahoma, but the concept that you shared, we were talking to a little bit earlier, which was the gang mentality or that mob mentality. Can you talk us through, the concept that you were sharing earlier about how that works and how people buy into it and so forth?
Yeah, I've always been very interested in gang and clubs and stuff like that. Why do people want to be a part of something where there doesn't tend to be monetary gain or, what have you? And the funny thing that I know is true for me, so I thought it had to probably be true for a lot of people, is I'm very attracted to the team aspect. I was okay as an associate. I read enough to develop the skills, but my excitement didn't kick into gear until I became a DSC and I had the opportunity to, if you will, build my own legal gang. And when you look
I love that.
at some of the leaders, uh, throughout history, they're not some of the greatest leaders are not people that we want to think about. It's not always for the right reasons. A leader doesn't always lead for the right reasons. And some of those are gang members. But how in the world are these gang members? And to back up a second, what got me interested in that was when I was about to go into high school, I actually had my nose crushed by brass knuckle from somebody that was in a gang.
Wow.
And so that is and that happened at 13 years old. So that's what kind of got me going. Why are people so interested in being in stuff like this? And it just stayed with me, throughout my life. And then later on, as I start studying leadership and I'm looking at what we're doing, it just blew me away that people are literally lined up down the block to be a member of a certain gang or what have you. And sometimes they have to do deplorable things to get in. Well, how do I create an environment where we don't have to hurt anybody, but in a way, we're our own legal gang. I mean, we're slinging insurance policies out here, and this is my turf. I mean, I'll tell you, Mikey, don't send anybody to Oklahoma to call on business on my turf because I will pack up the entire market and we will come to California and saturate you. I mean, that's just the mentality that I like to have. If you the deeper that you get into that, like there is a book and it's not a book on leadership or anything like that, but it's called All the Light We Cannot See. And in that book, as you read it, it's fiction, but it's written from the standpoint of someone that went through World War II when Hitler was doing what he was doing. And the first thing that Hitler did when he would go in and take over a city, at that time, the number one, the biggest thing for communication to people was radio. So the first thing that Hitler would do when he would take over a country was take over the communication, right?
Wow.
And the radio waves for 1 hour every night, he would come on and talk about what they're doing, why they're doing it, and the older people in these are completely against it, but everybody at that time, it was, pre TV being in every home, and all the kids are sitting around with all the adults, and for an hour every night he had the ear of entire countries, and he
Yeah.
would talk about why they're doing what they're doing and make it seem like the coolest thing in the world was to be a part of his army. And he was able to brainwash entire generations of people by repeating the same thing over and over, every night. And that's so much of what, leadership is. So, in a way, I wanted to create my own culture and people that this is us against
Hmm.
everything and everyone else. And and going to the nomination culture, so then I immediately start thinking about, okay, who then would I want in my organization? Who do I want running beside me? Well, it's the people that I know, like, and trust the most.
Yeah.
And it didn't start out that way. It started out with me just trying to get total strangers. And then eventually, I'm like, wait a minute, if this is really going to work, I've got to have people that I know, like, and trust that are going to fight right beside. Right. I went after my best friend in college, David Johnson, who
Mm.
is one of the, if not the largest producer in the history of Oklahoma.
Wow.
for Aflac. But it took me 3 years to talk him into it. And this is a guy that I talk to every day. You know what I mean? Like we do together every weekend. We're together every day. He has a great career, already, but it took me 3 years to get him. My brother, it took me 3 years to talk my brother into coming to Aflac. My dad, my one of my best friends, wives. I couldn't get him, but I got her. And my brother-in-law, once I caught on to just how good this is and what it can do, not only for other people, but for our own families and for our future, I couldn't understand how on earth anyone wouldn't want the same thing for the people closest to them. And the way that it started was I recruited my circle, relentlessly recruited my circle of trust, the circle of people that were closest to me. And the only thing I could think of to do at that time was to tell those people coming in, hey, so you're a part of my circle. And yes, while our circles are somewhat the same, you've got some people on the other side of your circle that are different than mine.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of people that we are going to build this organization with. And it's just talking to every person about your circle is where it comes from and then going after those people.
It's crazy because before I got to know you, I got to know people on your team. I got to know your brother Josh, who, it's nuts that he just retired and he's like, how old is he?
I'm 43.
43. Yeah, that's insane. Zach, and you're like, oh yeah, I knew Zach like when he was like 13, right? Like it's
No, I remember when Zach was born.
oh like that's great.
So yeah, his parents, his dad has been an associate CIT, DSC, and RSC with me. His mother is one of the best producers in the history of Oklahoma and was a terrific, DSC. I've known her since I was a kid. I think I met her husband when I was 15 or 16, Brian. And then, you've got Zach coming along, and that's part of that, bring in your circle, and they did that same thing.
The crazy part when you and I were talking, and maybe we had a couple glasses of wine or whatever, but we were talking about, where we both started, and then you were talking in Oklahoma and the town that you grew up in. Just all of a sudden, after a few years of like you as a region, and you started to like grow, all these houses start popping up, and like people actually like thought that you were a gang leader after a while, right? Because like all of a sudden these mansions are popping up all over your little town.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I didn't I didn't grow up that way. I mean, we're a very blue collar working class family that, thank goodness, my parents gave me something way more than money ever could,
Yeah.
which was character and work ethic. That was absolutely, you know, taught to us from the time we were born, all the way up: character, work ethic, character, work ethic. And it came from my grandfather, and my dad and mom and, to us. And that work ethic allowed the entire family. I mean, that's where it started to really do well, because in later years, I would recruit my dad to come to Aflac full time,
Hmm.
who has been a terrific producer for Aflac. Him and my mom have been huge producers, over the years. And so, yeah, it was funny because you start to look around and these big houses, are popping up and people are going, those people, they sell insurance? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no. And so, you know how it is, especially small town where everybody knows each other. There's always rumors that go around.
No, they're like, wait a second, like they sell Aflac like that doesn't what? No, truthfully, man, it's one of those things that when I'm hiring, and anytime I have been hiring, that's the what you were kind of talking about, of that blue collar work ethic, and that's what I look for in leaders. I love people that can fall in love with a process too, and I think that that's a strand that you could see in a lot of the people that are really successful here are not. There's a couple people that are really, really talented, and there's a couple people that, just are a little bit lucky, but the actual work ethic side is the one that, um, I don't know, it could be blue collar at times, and I love it because it's a thing that, you can build upon, and you can't really teach that part.
Right.
Uh, so I can't believe this because time is already going too fast, and we're gonna end up having to do a part 2 with you, Tim, because we didn't even get to talk about a third of the stuff that we wanna talk about with you, so, if you don't mind, I hope we get to invite you back for another round, but we wanna still hit on a couple final things here. So one is just with nominations, you're talking about your circle and all of that stuff. What do you think when people are like leaders are trying to push nominations? What do you think is like one of the bigger mistakes that they make? When that like when you hear other people just talking about it.
Timing. So when you've got a new associate coming on and they're really starting to hit their stride and make money, that's where nominations come from.
Mm,
Um, y- a lot of times, if somebody's been around for a really long time and they think back, they sometimes they may start to doubt whether other people can do it and they feel like maybe they got lucky. Sometimes we hit people way too early before they've had, a little bit of success and they're scared to tell people, about it. But in the first 2 years of someone's career, when they're really starting to move up, that is when we will absolutely get the best nominations. And that's when those people are really going to get into their circle and bring in people they know, like, and trust. And that is a cheat code, 100% a cheat code inside this company. Nominations are a cheat code in and of themselves, but we've got to hit the timing right. We got to have the conversation at the right time. Otherwise, they're going to look us in the eye and they're going to tell us, "Yeah, I'll tell you," but they're giving you their third tier people because they're not exactly sure. When they start doing well and they start seeing what it's doing for their family and their belief, as Nate talks about all the time, and their excitement is the highest, that's when you want to really have that conversation with them on what it can do for them and their future.
that's so spot on, man.
And here's
Yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing, and I don't want to, if we're talking about nominations, I don't want to miss out on this. So many times people have this misnomer that but the more people that they nominate or bring into the business, the less business there is going to be for them to get. First off, we're not high enough penetrated per capita across the country for that to even be a consideration or a thought in anybody's head.
Correct.
But when you start to look at that, several years ago, I did one of the best things for nominations I've ever did. More than several years ago, it was a long time ago.
I'm
I need to
taking
do it,
notes.
but I had my entire team in, and I had their entire list of accounts that they all serviced, and I put it in front of them, and I gave them all a highlighter, and I said, I want you to go down this list of accounts and highlight. And you've got veterans in there that take care of 50 accounts, 100 accounts, 150 accounts. But I want you to highlight the accounts that you personally opened. Okay. You by yourself from brand new account from day one, all the ones that you personally opened, highlight those accounts for me. And down at the bottom, it had their total production, right? Now I want you to go back and add up all the AP that you wrote last year from just the accounts that you have personally opened. Now put that below the total amount of AP you wrote and subtract the total. What you will see from the majority of people in this company, probably over 90%, is that the majority of the business that they write is in accounts they did not open that
Mm,
have been around from, you know, maybe you brought in someone that opened 5 or 6 accounts and didn't stay. I had a guy one time that opened 17 accounts in 5 months and was very, very successful. And he came and he sat down and he said, "Hey, I'm good at this. I make money at this. I can do this, but it's not for me. I believe in everything you're doing, but I'm a country boy and this is not for me. And
Yeah.
I just don't want to keep doing it. People have different reasons for, everything. And he left those 17 accounts behind and went somewhere else. I had another guy that had written more business than he had ever written in his life and did the same thing. He's like, hey, it's just not for me. And he turned those accounts over for the next 10 years. Out of the last guy that I talked about, our average AP on the accounts that he had opened, that he had personally opened, $230,000 per year in production for 10 years.
Crazy.
And so when I had those people to take the accounts that they opened and put that underneath what they actually wrote, and they saw that I write more business from people that come in and open accounts and leave than I do in just accounts that I have opened. Then they start to go, wait a minute, the game is how many accounts we can get at Aflac. And then all I need to do is give wonderful service and take care of accounts. Because if you stick around with Aflac, you're going to get accounts given to you. We need people that take care of a book of business. The
Yeah.
fastest way for you to grow your renewals, your book of business, and everything is still nominations. If you don't want to open accounts and you just want to service accounts, start nominating people. And if they come in and they do really well, then who do you think they're going to ask to come and enroll with them? If they choose not to do it and this is not for them, and they open 3 accounts, 5 accounts, 17 accounts, 31 accounts. If you nominate that person, I'm going to give that entire book of business to you when they leave. And you literally win every way. You can't lose if you look at it the right way. Veterans, look at your book of business at how much you write. And when you realize how much of it you didn't actually open, it will start to make sense to you how you get wealthy in this business through nominations.
Wow.
That's a different way of seeing nominations. I don't think I've even viewed it that way either.
Same. I know I didn't. That's absolutely and one that we always talked about is just like, like longer you're here, you're going to get more accounts. I mean, that is absolutely like 100% true. Like, no, that's so spot on. I love that. I was taking literary patron notes right now.
Every hero needs a sidekick. The site seller is yours, helping you ask the right questions, show the right numbers, and land the right solutions. Navigate conversations like a pro and turn every business owner into a believer.
All right. So, Michelle Lee, we are going to do our rapid fire with Mr. Tim Worthy here. So, you kick us off. We have some new ones coming.
So, my favorite go to question for rapid fire is if your stress could be a mascot, Tim, what would it be?
Say it again.
If your stress could be a mascot or was a mascot, what would it be?
If my stress could
Was
be
a
a
mascot.
a grizzly.
A grizzly.
But I will tell you this, there is a book which, Mike, you and I have talked a little bit about stoicism. And there is a book which I've been, I'm really into studying stoicism right now, but there's a book that you can read called Stillness is the Key.
It's such a good
Every
one.
leader should study, not read, but study that book because it will change that. And while my stress is a grizzly bear over my career, today he is tamed and I lead him around on a collar with a leash.
I like that. And hey, and
Great.
grizzlies they hibernate too, so that's yeah. Yeah. Stillness is the key. It's fantastic. And yeah, you and I are on a similar trajectory of studying stoicism more. And yeah, it's a fun journey, man. That's actually leading me to the next one. So I know it's probably changed over the years, but what is a book that you believe that you've recommended or given or handed out the most?
The most that I've given out is the book by Frank Bettiger, How I Brought Myself from Failure to Success in Sales.
Mm,
And that book is timeless. It was written in the 20s and absolutely still brilliant today. I suggest it to every single new associate. Uh, yeah, I mean, I could go on
I
and on. You know how you and I both like to read,
yeah.
but because I also want to say Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, that book will change your life in a hurry and your leadership in a hurry.
I'm happy that you just said that one because that was on my I actually haven't read that, and I that is on my list this year, of, people I respect. That one is a huge one that people have talked about a lot, and I haven't read the first one that you recommended either. That's good for me. I'm gonna check both of those out, and for anybody that's actually listening, because you did say this earlier, and I didn't really pinpoint it myself, but books are a huge reason why I mean, it's maybe a singular reason why I am still here. I had great mentors, but I can't, those mentors led me to start reading, which I did not read before I came into Aflac, and listening to audiobooks. And truthfully, that's what's helped me sustain success too. So thank you for sharing that because I think we miss that a lot.
I think we are ready to close the chat.
All right. So, Tim, we appreciate this, and this means that we definitely have to, because we have so much more that we want to talk about. So we're gonna we're gonna be begging you for a part two on this one. So, I wanted to just say any final thoughts that you want to share or takeaways that you want to make sure that the team out there takes away from this.
Oftentimes, the worst leaders in the world are great speakers because we feel like that we can move a room to tears and walk away and that the job is done. But how often you can repeat the main thing is actually the secret. And so get get what it is that you want, get your direction and repeat it so much that before you say what you're going to say, your people start saying it back. That's the only time that you ever actually made a difference. A great leader is a broken record. And yeah, I will end with that. And if we get to do another one, there's some books in that direction that I could absolutely point you towards understanding that success and our own brains are a mathematical equation. And that's why that works.
I love that. I love that, and totally agree with everything you just said. So I appreciate you so much, man. And this has been just fantastic for us. Michelle, I'm gonna stop talking and turn to you.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, Tim, because sustainability is that word that when I was a district under Michael Fisher, yep, it finally came up because he said it so much, like a light bulb, it went off. But Tim, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing how this career is built with belief and sustained by the people around us. This has been the LA Legends. If this episode hit home, share it with someone heading into a big close. Make sure to subscribe and on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Share it with someone who can benefit from today's conversation.